Welcome to the Quick Bite Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Klinger. Today we have a special guest on, one of my dear friends in the industry that I'm in the restaurants and food and beverage, and that is Stuart Brown, the Executive Director of the Inspire Brands Foundation. Stuart, what a pleasure it is to have you on the podcast.
Oh, Brian, man, thanks for the opportunity to come and share. Super excited to connect and catch up a little bit. And looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome, man. Hey, if you would tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do at the Inspire Brands Foundation and the mission of the Inspire Brands Foundation.
Sure. At the Inspire Brands Foundation, we are set up to really invest back in the community. We talk about we want to ignite and nourish change for good. And really what that means is that we are about investing in the nonprofits that take care of the kids, wherever we have Inspire restaurants in all of our communities. We talk a lot about turning if kids into win kids. And what that means is that there's a lot of kids that have uncertainty in their lives. And we know that uncertainty is toxic. It is a killer for kids. Even as adults, we don't like uncertainty. But imagine your brain is not fully formed. You're wondering, where's my next meal going to come from? Or am I ever going to find an adult who's going to invest in me? Or, man, will I be prepared for a job? All those kinds of big if questions. And they really stunt a child's ability to grow emotionally, mentally, physically, all those ways, because they're focused on stuff they're not supposed to be focused on. Those uncertainties are supposed to be certainties. So we say we turn if kids into win kids, and we take away the uncertainty, and we make sure that they're getting access to food, to mentors, and great education, and access to youth sports, all the things that allow a kid to be a kid and therefore grow at the right trajectory so they will be ready for tomorrow's workforce. And just whatever it is that they can best really become the kids that they were created to be.
That's fantastic, Stuart. And for those that don't know, Inspire Brands is a company that's made up of multiple brands based out of Atlanta, Georgia. So a few companies you might have heard of, maybe Dunkin' Donuts and Buffalo Wild Wings, Arby's, Jimmy John's, Sonic, Baskin Robbins, and of course the B-Dubs Go stores. Joshua Liggins would throat punch me if I did not mention that. He said that is the up and coming shiny star of the Inspire Brands portfolio. A lot of growth opportunities there. I love that Inspire Brands does have this foundation that does so much great work across the country. And it's a way I know a lot of people love to give their business to companies that give back, companies that are on purpose and making a difference.
Yeah, no, 100%. And first of all, I'd say that all the brands are shining stars. So let's go ahead and get that on. But yeah, I mean, one of Inspire's core values, core behaviors is around this idea of being good citizens. And that can mean a lot of different things for our managers and our leaders out in the field, and really managers, leaders, wherever. It's about what kind of culture are you creating. But one of the ways that the foundation plays into that is really looking at our communities and saying, how can we make these communities better? How can we become an even more integral part of what's going on in this community? Not just a place to get a great morning beverage or lunch or wings or whatever it might be, but also a place that really lifts up the community, so that as everyone in that community thinks about what defines that community, it's one of our restaurants. It's the people that we have working there, and we become a place that is just really just a win for everybody involved.
That's awesome. So I'm excited to have you on the podcast, Stuart, because I know you're a tremendous human being. You do a lot of life change in the community with the help of a great team. And you're really rallying so many folks like your corporate sponsors and partners and community impact partners to do good in the world. So I want to dive into what makes Stuart Brown who he is. And let's dive into the 10 questions. Everybody gets the same 10. Let's get on number 1. What is the best piece of business advice that you've ever received?
All right. So this advice was not specifically for me. In fact, I picked it up. I was watching one of the award shows, and Tom Hanks got an award, Lifetime Achievement Award. And I thought, man, I should listen to this guy. He's like, no one is better at their career field than he is at his. And he said that when he was first starting out, one of his first directors gave him this advice. It's 6 words: show up, be prepared, and have ideas. And so I thought, man, so let me write that down. What is that? What does that mean? And he talks about showing up. Hey, be on time. Like when you show up late, you are disrespecting everyone in the process. You're slowing everyone down. So just be on time. Be prepared. I mean, can you imagine if you were the most prepared person in every meeting that you were ever in? Like, that would be just phenomenal. And I have that aspirational goal. Obviously, it doesn't happen, but the idea of I'm going to be as prepared for my day as I can. If you do those 2 things, you're ahead of probably 95% of the people you will ever work with. But the third one is really the tricky one, right? And he said, have ideas. Now, I think in his world, that probably means, hey, where do you want me? I'm saying maybe I could deliver the line this way, or I could stand over here. I think the way I've translated that is add value. Yes, be on time. Yes, be prepared. But how do you add value to whatever it is you're doing? And I always want to kind of couch it with that because I don't want to give a bunch of younger people in their career this idea that hey, you need to come in and have ideas because maybe the last thing everyone needs is someone who's right out of school coming in and saying, hey, I've been here for all of 90 seconds. I've got all sorts of ideas on how to do the same better, right? That be true. But in the front end, it's like, how do you add value from what's just expected of you? So if you just do those three things, man, that would help you stand out from probably almost 100% of the people you'd ever meet. So
Yeah, I agree with you so much. I love that. And one of the things I say a lot is half of success in life is just showing up. It's just getting in the room and face to face. And those are a lot of my big pet peeves. I've also lived by this mantra of, on time is late, 15 minutes early is on time in my book. There's a little quirkiness with that. Some people don't like it when you're there and sitting in the lobby, so I try to be respectful. But to your point though, Stuart, it is have those ideas, be prepared, show up. And then I love what you said too. There's value in two ears and one mouth, especially if you're not the smartest person in the room, or maybe you do have big ideas, but you do need to read the room. You really do need to understand who's in front of you. Question number two is, what are the top three qualities, in your opinion, that every leader should have? What are those three qualities that really jump out at you?
oh, man. So have you heard this thing about the difference between leading and manipulating? Have you heard this? All right. So
No?
leading is getting people to do what's best for them. Manipulating is getting people to do what's best for you. All right. So I want to circle back to that. I thought that was a really important part of this. And so here's how I want to connect it. I've got a buddy of mine, a guy named Tim Spiker. He's been studying leadership for his entire career. And he says this. He says 75% of leadership is not what you do, but it is who you are. And he goes on to say that leadership is really about these two things, being inwardly sound and others focused. So what that means is to be a great leader, it's not about whether or not you're a visionary, a great strategist, a great communicator, great at business plans and project management, all those things. Those things are great and they're important, they're necessary. But that the data would suggest that the people who constantly rise to the top as great leaders, they are inwardly sound and others focused. And I think the obvious question there is, what does it mean to be inwardly sound? And so Tim would say this, it's about being self-aware, principled, purposeful, holistically healthy, secure in who you are. And then the others focused is being attentive, like you were just saying, 2 ears, one mouth, curious, empathetic, humble, and really having this kind of selfless approach to how you live your life. So I think I cheated. That was way more than three, but let's call it two. Let's call it inwardly sound and others focused.
Man, that's fantastic. I will. Is that published somewhere? Is that a published?
It is. It's called Who Not What by Tim Spiker.
Very cool. We'll have to check that out. Thank you for that, Stuart. That's a new one on me. Number three, how does someone become a leader?
Well, I guess if I'm going to tie these answers together, the question is, how do I become inwardly focused or inwardly sound and or others focused? Man, you know this. There's no easy answers for that. I think it's really getting reps over time. But I think one key thing is this: self-awareness. And if I said, like, if we're in a situation and you call me up and said, "Hey, Stuart, I'm trying to get to your house, but I don't really know how to get there," what's the first question I'm going to ask you?
Where are you?
Where are you? Right. So I think the first thing you have to do in order to become a leader or a great leader, as we're trying to do, is you have to be really self-aware on where am I on that journey? And only once you know where you are, can you then figure out what are the steps I need to take? Right. Because you may say, man, I'm really inwardly sound, but I'm pretty self-centered. So that means I need to do work on others focused. Right. You may flip it around. Right. Or you could break it up. Like, I'm not very curious, or whatever it is. So I think if you can do that homework to say, this is where I am, then you can be super intentional and super deliberate on the steps you have to take to become that leader. And then honestly, I think you got to give yourself some time and reps and experience. I don't think there's a ton of great leaders who are super young because you just haven't had enough life experience. Now, there's exceptions to that for sure, but know where you are, be intentional, and get lots and lots of reps.
Yeah, I love that. And the know where you are part, I think, is the one that jumps off the page at me. I've heard a couple of CEOs and other executives I've interviewed that talk about, the authentic self and being the authenticity and the power of it. And Stuart, we even had a speaker at the Spark event recently talked about showing up in your authentic self. But this one CEO I had on recently, Stuart, said that they wrestled with, who am I? Actually, who is that authentic person? And the more that she dug into it, the more she started uncovering some wounds and some baggage, and really discovered some things that she needed to wrestle with, and really to lay down and surrender in order to become that leader that she wanted to be. But it first took taking the mask off, and I think what you just shared really does underscore that need of really understanding and looking inward.
Well, let me add to that as well. I think you're right on that, and kudos to that leader, because sometimes when you have that C title, it's hard to say, "Hey," to be vulnerable and say, "I'm not really sure who I am." So that's some really impressive leadership. The other thing I'd want to add to that is, do you remember the story of Nehemiah? You
Mhm.
right? And so, for those who may not know, this is a story from Jewish tradition, Old Testament, whatever it is, from the Hebrew Bible. And Nehemiah was commissioned to go rebuild the walls around the city of Jerusalem. Now, I don't know a lot about what that means. It sounds like it was going to take a really long time and a lot of hard work, and would require a lot of leadership to make sure this thing happens. But what I want to focus on in this little piece is the intentionality. And so, what happened is he was rebuilding this wall. Some people didn't want him to succeed. And so they were trying to trap him, and they come up and said, "Oh, Nehemiah, we got this thing." And they were just trying to distract him and get him away from his job. And he said this. He said, "I am doing a great work and I can't come down from the wall." Okay. And so I love that intentionality to say, "Hey, nothing's going to get in the way of me accomplishing this thing I've set out to do." So I think for those of us who are like, "Hey, I want to become a better leader," yes, it's self awareness, but then it's that like relentless, ruthless commitment to the intentionality of becoming a better leader and not getting distracted by all the other stuff. Now, I'm guilty as charged. I get distracted as easily as the next person, but that's an aspirational like line. I'm doing a great work. I can't come down from the wall. And if we can lean into that, I think it helps us get there further faster.
Yeah, amen. That's a great example there. And it kind of ties into the next question. What role does faith play in your business life? And I love the variety of answers that I've heard on the show. And it's deeply personal, this answer for most people. I'd love to hear your take on that. How does faith show up, not only in your business life, but your personal life?
Yeah. Look, on my best days, one of the ways that faith informs how I go about and informs my operating system is that, man, we are all in need of grace, and we are all in need of something that we have not earned and cannot possibly earn. And so I think if I start with that piece, like this idea that I haven't earned it except for by the grace of God, all those kinds of things. And so some of the ways that plays out, is usually when I talk about my role, I don't say it's my job or my role or my title or whatever it is. I'll usually say I get to serve as the executive director of the Inspire Foundation. It is a seat. I am blessed to have it. It is something that is a real manifestation of grace in my life that I get to sit in that seat. And it's not mine, right? And so I want to be a good steward of that. So I think it comes out that way. Little things. I end almost every email I send with the word grateful. Just from hey, again, I didn't earn this. I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful to sit in that, and I'm going to be the best steward of it that I can be. I think the other idea of the way it plays out in little ways and big ways is this idea that everyone we meet, everyone we work with, everyone we serve, everyone we report to, um, everyone we invest in, if we believe what we say we believe, is that they were created in the image of God, and so everyone is worth time, energy, effort, resources. Um, everyone that we have a chance to lean into is super valuable and is a child of our God, right? So I think there's a lot of those ways that it plays out. Now, to be fair, not every day am I thinking about my faith. Not every day am I living it out. Not every day am I truly grateful and grace filled, and all that kind of stuff. But when I'm at my best, those are some of the ways that this plays out.
And I can tell you, knowing Stuart the way I do, I see that all the time. He's very consistent in the gratitude, and I love that. When I believe gratitude is so important, and being thankful and being humble enough, and then knowing that I'm a believer, as you know as well, Stuart, and believe it is all by God's grace that any of us are here. So that's beautiful answer. Uh, who's had the greatest impact on you professionally? And I know this question can often be hard because a person like Stuart Brown does not, you're not who you are because of just one person. There are so many people that have put their fingerprints on your life. But if you want to call out one or two, who would you really like to
I
talk
mean,
about?
I could look at a gentleman, Gary Godfrey, who he decided that when he was at Anderson Consulting years ago, that Anderson should recruit at Auburn for his particular portion of the company. And for 2 years, they came down and recruited at Auburn. I happen to be one of those guys, and so I can look at that and go, if not that, then how does everything else play out? I can look at my boss up at Target Corporation. When I was woefully out of place, incredible organization, but I was woefully out of place, and Gretchen Cragness just absolutely believed in me, mentored me, and helped me figure out what my next step should be. And just was a real resource and champion for me that season. But one of the guys that I guess first came to mind is a guy named David McDaniel, who was a mentor for mine for about 20 years. We've lost touch over the last 4 or 5 years, but during that 20 years, man, he willingly met with me on a monthly basis, even when I moved from Atlanta to Chicago to Minnesota and back. Like, we stayed in touch. He was always there. He's always available. Um, he loaned me money, no interest when I was a broke graduate student. No contract, just said, "Hey, pay it back when you can." He performed the my wedding when I finally got married in my 30s. I could go on and on. He was there all the way, all along the way. And I think there's two things that really stand out about those kinds of people in your life. One is they're available, and two, they believe in you. And if you got people in your life who are available and they truly believe in you, that is such a catalyst for your growth. And I've been blessed to have a lot of folks like that. Those are three that I named, but yeah, really, really fortunate for that.
It's awesome. And who's a company that you admire? And feel free to show some bias if you'd like, or there may be someone that's completely, outside of your hemisphere. But and why? What do you admire about this company?
All right, so I thought about this a good bit, and the first thing that came to mind is that once you have tried startup world, once you've been in a few organizations, you know how hard and difficult it is for any organization to truly thrive. So, I mean, I've got so much admiration for any organization that's out there. They're doing it. They're profitable. They're making ends meet every year, and because it's just hard to do that well. And now then, that's kind of a boring answer. And the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to exclude all the organizations I've worked for in the past, because that's also could be a fairly boring answer. But obviously, man, so much admiration for the leaders that inspire and the people I get to work with. And then, one of the great things about my role is that I get to work with hundreds of nonprofits all over the country. And so many of them are really blowing me away by their execution, their passion, their commitment to data and changing lives and all those kinds of things. And so I think since I buried the lead here, I think one of the ones that really stands out to me at this point is the Ron Clark Academy. If you've been around Inspire the last couple of years, you've heard Ron speak. But what stands out to me is that if you walked onto their campus, every single student is an ambassador for their mission. Like, those kids blow you away. They really are just an incredible reminder of what's possible when education is done right. And the other thing that I was really impressed by is the ability to say, "Hey, here's what we're doing in our little corner of the world, but what if we could train everyone to do that?" And then put together a plan to bring in tens of thousands of teachers from around the world every year so that they can then help them see what's possible in an educational environment. They're truly changing the world. And so again, I could go on and on, but that's one of the ones that jumped out.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that was the first time I was able to see the Ron Clark Academy culture on display, which is at the Spark event recently, and to watch those students walk on the stage with confidence and passion and energy and just lit up the room. And it was mind blowing to me. So that's actually I have a list of things I want to do on my marker board desk. And one of the things they talked about was offering these tours that they do where you can come on campus and see it. And that's actually on my 2025 to do list. that was from being at the Inspire Spark event and seeing Ron Park Academy. So
We can make that happen for you. Let's talk.
yeah, that was incredible. So moving on to question number 7, a little bit deeper topic here. Can you share a story about a time that you overcame adversity?
Oh man. So like I've heard a couple of your other episodes, and this is an intimidating question because I mean, at 30,000 feet, my life's been so easy. Like, it's been so easy. And so I'm going to zag a little bit on this and talk a little bit more of a super micro story of what happened a few years ago. I spent the summer of 2001, I think, in Alaska. I had a bunch of buddies that came up to go hiking with me, and they were all like just finished up high school and were college students. And none of us had any business being out in the, the wilds of Alaska together. But there we were. And we got completely lost. And one of the things about being lost is you don't know you're lost until you're already lost. And we had to cross this river to get back to our campsite. And there was no easy way to cross it. And so it's one of those like when you think about adversity, one of the things that defines it is you don't know how it's going to end. And one of the things that really makes it easy to get through it is you don't have a choice. You got to get through it, right? And so the question is, are you going to do it, and are you all going to fall apart and everyone do their own thing? Are you going to be super risky? Are you going to be kind of meticulous and be thoughtful about how you do it? Are you going to work together? And so, long story short is I'm here. So we figured it out. We got out. We had to cross this river, and there were a couple pretty scary moments where we were way into like literally not over our heads, but way higher than we should have been in a fast moving river. But through the ability of like literally linking arms, we got across the river, got back to our campsite, got out the next day. All was good. No one, no real lasting issues. I've not been in everyone's therapy sessions over the last 20 years. So maybe, I don't know. But I think it was that we had to lean on each other. It was resilience. There's a trial and error aspect to it, because when there's no script and no map and whatever it is, like you just got to try some things. You have to be willing to try some things, but try it with some risk. What's the word? Risk aversion, maybe. I put context around that. One of my buddies, who's an incredibly successful entrepreneur, he said, "Man, Stuart, everyone thinks I'm so risky. And I'm just out there trying stuff." And he said, "It's completely not true. What I do is I stack up as many mattresses as I can, and then I take a jump. And then if I miss, no big deal. I've got all these mattresses to land on, right?" And I think it's when we talk about these situations where there's trial and error, it's not about truly being risky, but it's about setting yourself up for a really easy landing, even if it doesn't work. And so I circle back to that moment of just a chance to work with my buddies to accomplish something that seemed really hard, when there was no easy answer, and yet finding some success on the other side.
I love that you zagged on that one, because I really feel like that's a fantastic framework. Because not every story someone does share about adversity, yes, it can be inspiring, but you just gave a framework for how to deal with adversity. The mindset, right, is so important. So that's a unique answer, Stuart. You get a star for that. Thank you for for zagging there. So on a little bit lighter note, what's a fun fact about Stuart Brown that a lot of people don't know? Feel free to break any news you'd like.
Can't break any news here, but one of my fun facts that I do like to share is that over the course of my life, I've been a groomsman, best man, officiant in like 25 plus weddings. And the reason I like that is if you talk to my kids and you say, "Hey, what's your most valuable possession?" They'll say relationships. You've heard me say that before. And so for me, that's a little, just something I'm very proud of, that I had, in different seasons of life, so many guys that I was close to that they said, "Hey, I want you to stand up to me on this, one of the most 3 or 4 important days of my life." Stand there and say, "Hey, you're for me." And that's just one of those things that I love. And there's a lot of, I'm sure, if I were to look back, a lot of rented tuxedos and a lot of money on that. But it's just something that makes me smile when I think about on all those relationships and the privilege of someone saying, "Hey, I want you to stand with me, and I want you to know."
That's a lot about you too, Stuart, though. And I know this is not something you're fishing for at all, but I'm going to freely compliment you on that. I tell, my kids all the time that you are the byproduct of the closest 5 relationships that you have. And you're in that circle, obviously, of a lot of people that they would count on you as their closest 5, and so that's good. That says a lot about who you are. So on number 9, wrap it up here. How much time do you dedicate to unwinding, and how do you like to unwind? What does Stuart do when you're not leading the organization and serving the way you do?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think the easy answer is daily. I have about an hour commute home, and so I know that someone's happiness is supposed to be inversely proportionate to the length of their commute. Having said that, actually, I love my commute. I get podcasts and books I get to listen to all the time. Occasionally, get to catch up with some buddies on my way home on the call, and that's time that's not really being pulled away from family once I get home. In fact, the days that I work from home, I actually miss the commute because I want the books, I want the content, and I want the chance to just kind of keep the mind active and learning. By the time I get home, there's a little bit about, all right, now I can be fully home, not to worry about all the stress or whatever it is that might be going on from work.
Nice, love that. And the last question is, where does this come from? Where does this passion come from? What is your why?
Um, this may be a little bit too saccharine sweet when I say this, but I think a lot about whether or not my dad would be proud of me, and I come back to that pretty frequently. And he made it clear before he passed that he was proud and all that. But I think there's a little bit when you have had so much admiration for your dad or your parents. Doesn't have to be a dad, but in my case, um, that you're like, man, I want them to be proud. I want to know that would love for them to know that I don't take lightly all the sacrifices they made to help me get to where I am. Because I know there's a lot of things they could have done differently if they had been different kinds of parents. And so just that idea that at some point you say, yeah, I'm proud of you. And we can spiritualize that to a bigger picture if we want. But if I'm getting back to the kind of the practical, physical side of it, I think about that a lot. And so it's a pretty good motivator.
It is. It is. Well, I guarantee he's proud of you, and that's a beautiful way to look at that too, Stuart. So thank you for sharing it. What a joy it's been to have you on the podcast, Stuart Brown, leader and the chief server, serving at the Inspire Brands Foundation. He's a steward of this amazing organization, turning the ifs into wins in people's lives every day. Thank you so much for being on the Quick Bite podcast. What a pleasure.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Very much enjoyed it.